Hi guys, please subscribe to this channel and like the video to support my project. And we are starting a new adventure. We are in Museum of Chernobyl disaster. 37 years ago, 26 April 1986, in Chernobyl, that it's near 100 kilometers from Kyiv, happened a nuclear disaster. The modern exhibition of the museum, located in several halls with a total area about 1,100 meters square, has more than 7,000 exhibits. There are documents, maps, photographs, special devices, everything connected with this terrible catastrophe. Above us are signs with the names of settlements that suffered from the disaster. Just imagine, Chernobyl nuclear power plant, April 26, 1986. A planned shutdown of the reactor, which lasted only 20 seconds, seemed like a routine check of electrical equipment. However, in a few seconds, as a result of a sharp power surge, a chemical explosion occurred, as a result of which about 520 dangerous radionuclides were released into the atmosphere. It is estimated that the total yield of the explosion was more than 100 times that the nuclear weapons used during the Second World War. The explosion was so powerful that the pollution spread to large areas of the territory of the Soviet Union. If the remained free blocks had exploded, then a high level of radioactive contaminants would have spread across the English Channel. According to official reports, 31 people died immediately after the disaster, and 600,000 liquidators who took part in firefighting and clearing received high doses of radiation. About 155,000 square kilometers of territory, which is almost half of the total area of Italy, was contaminated. Agricultural land with an area almost 52,000 square kilometers, which is more than the territory of Denmark, were contaminated with cesium-137 and strontium-90, which half-life of 30 and 28 years respectively. The accident happened at about 1 a.m. The explosion also triggered 30 fires. It was necessary to protect the remaining power units of the station. Firefighters were called. The brigade went to the place. The rescuers did not have protective suits, only ordinary overalls and gas masks. Despite this, by 6 o'clock of the morning, the fire was completely extinguished. But the burning on the energy block continued for another 10 days. Residual graphite stopped burning less than 10th May. However, it cannot be said that experts then understood the gravity of the events. It was not possible to measure the level of radiation until morning. Then hours after the explosion had already passed. Therefore, the real figures of the level of radiation in the source of the explosion are still unknown. The state of the reactor was also ascertained correctly. Actually, it was thought that it was somehow intact and need to be cooled, but the effort proved unnecessary. The reactor was badly damaged after the explosion. Even worse, the Soviet authorities did everything to hide the consequences of the disaster from the world. For 2 days, the world knew nothing about the explosion. On April 27, a sharp increase in the radiation background was recorded in Denmark and Sweden, after which the Swedish authorities turned to Moscow with a demand to provide an explanation. Instead, Thousands of people, including children, took part in a festive demonstration in radioactive Kyiv on May 1st to show the world that, as they say, nothing happened. At the same time, on April 28, 100 Kyiv buses left for Pripyat to take people out of there. They were ordered to take everything they need, documents and money, and board the buses. First, pregnant women and parents with children were taken to Kyiv. They were settled in sanatorium and recreation centers. People were not told that they wouldn't return home. It was announced that this was a temporary security measure for a couple of days. In general, more than 44,000 people were evacuated, and about 1,000 went to relatives in other regions. People were not immediately warned about the danger and was not provided with any recommendations on how to behave in order to reduce the impact of radiation. And official documents on the evacuation came later, on May 4th. They were spread the news that there had been an ordinary fire that did not pose any danger. An order was given in all grocery stores to cover food products with films. Also, during the course, the trucks were placed in department stores and in Kyiv City Executive Committee to wipe their feet. 2,293 settlements became radioactively contaminated in Ukraine. As a result of the catastrophe, over 5 million hectares of land were stolen from the rural settlement. The Chernobyl disaster was assigned a score out of 7 possible on the international scale of nuclear impact, which made it the largest man-made disaster of that time. The nuclear board went so far that they went to Ireland. But why this horrible accident happened? On today's estimation, the causes of the accident are follows. A reactor was incorrectly designed and unsafe. Staff had not been informed about insecurity. Staff wanted to complete the experiment that they did that night without respect on the reactor state. To eliminate the aftermath of the accident, a special commission was created. In the first days, the main task was directed at reducing radioactive waste from the blasted reactor and more serious reports. At the end of 1986, the destroyed reactor of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant was covered with a special sarcophagus. According to experts' estimation, about 95% of the fuel that was in the reactor at the time of the accident remained under it. From the point of view of the effect on the population in the first weeks after the accident, the greatest danger was radioactive iodine, which has a relatively short half-life, 8 days, and tellurium. Strontium and cesium isotopes with a half-life of about 30 years also poses the greatest danger. The highest concentration of cesium-137 were found in the surface layer of the soil, from where it entered plants and fungi. Insects and animals that feed on them were also exposed to infection. Radioactive isotopes of plutonium and americium will remain in the soil for hundreds and possibly thousands of years, but their quantity does not pose a threat. Greenpeace and the International Organization Doctors Against Nuclear War claim that tens of thousands of people died due to the accident among the liquidators alone. Most of those who in the first days struggled with the consequences of the accident, including the militaries who were called to clean up the radioactive graphite, are no longer alive. In Europe, registered 10,000 cases of congenital pathologies in newborns, 10,000 cases of thyroid cancer, and another 50,000 are expected. It is believed that the growth of oncological diseases in the world is the consequences of the Chernobyl disaster. The city of Pripyat, which before the disaster was a beautiful and promising city, is now a dead city. About 10 square kilometers of forested territory adjacent to the Chernobyl, which took on the largest share of radioactive dust emission during the reactor explosion on April 26, 1986, is now called the Red Forest. A high dose of absorbed radiation led to the death of trees, mainly pines, and their brown red coloration. In addition, the glow of dead trees was observed at night, caused by interaction of tree enzymes with radioactive particles and radioactive decay. During the decontamination works, the forest was bulldozed and buried. The Chernobyl disaster served as a warning to all humanity of how fragile our future could be with uncontrolled radiation. We must remember the feat of people who stopped future tragedy at the cost of their lives and health. We can do everything so that the future similar catastrophes are not repeated in any way, and the memory of these people lived in our hearts. That's all for today. I thank you for your attention. Please subscribe to my channel and like the video, and see you in the new interesting places.